Welcome to another week of math, and this week we're going to be looking at equivalent fractions. Now, equivalent means the same, right? So, like fractions that are renamed to be the same. And for our big ideas, if you look at our points, the first one is in order to compare fractions, they need to be renamed, right? But not only to compare them to see which one's greater or less than, they also need to be renamed to perform certain functions like add and subtracting fractions. Okay, so keep that in mind as we go on in the video. And the next big idea is fractions can be renamed in an infinite number of ways, and we'll talk about both. Also, at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a password. And the password is just a little test for me to see who watches the video. And I'm going to tell you to email me the password. And once you email me the password, then I know you watched the video in its entirety. So let's get started. I'm going to move the screen. Okay, so here's 8/20ths. Okay, and I'm gonna model 8/20ths using circle counters. And this week you're gonna find out why I like the circle counter model the most, right? So I'm gonna make 20 small circles. Okay, now remember the circles, I'm trying to make them the same size because fractions are equal parts of a whole. Okay, so there are my 20 circles, and the 20 circles obviously represent the denominator, right? 20 parts. Now, of those 20 parts, 8 of them are in color, so I'm going to color 8 circles. And there we go. There are my 8 parts. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be making larger groups. Now, the reason to make larger groups is that you'll start to see that 2 fractions will emerge, and those 2 fractions are equivalent. Now, in order to make the groups, there are some certain rules you need to follow. First, each group has to have the same amount of counters. Okay, you can't make one group with 4 counters and then one group with 2. Like they all have to have the same. And in this case, there's going to be groups of 2. Okay, so each group is going to have 2 counters. The other rule is that when you make your groups, you have to keep the same color or non-color. So you can't make a group that has 1 counter that's in color and 1 counter that's not colored. It has to be color and color or not color and not color. Okay, so same amount of circles and same type of circles or counters. So here we go. Here is 1 group. Here's 2 groups. 3 groups. Okay. Now I'm not changing the number of circles that are or counters that are colored. Nothing's changing. I'm just making larger groups. But as I do that, you'll see another fraction start to emerge. You'll actually see 2 fractions. Okay, so then let's look at those 2 fractions. The first fraction you'll see, okay, you'll still see 8/20ths if you look at the tiny counters. But then the other fraction you'll see is when you look at groups. So how many groups are there? So here's 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So there are 10 groups. Now, of those 10 groups, how many are in color? 1, 2, 3, 4. So what that tells us is that 8/20ths is equal to 4/10ths. All right, so I still hope that you can look at this and see those 2 fractions and that it forms equivalent fractions. Okay, now that's not all. So here are the same 8/20ths, right? I just got to color my circles again. Now, this time, instead of groups of 2, I'm going to make groups of 4, right? It doesn't matter how many groups, like you can make groups of anything as long as it has the same amount of counters, right? So here's 1 group of 4. Here's another group of 4. So another group of 4. Okay, so I'm not changing the amount of counters. I'm not coloring anything else. It's just making larger groups. Okay, and now you could see that in total there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 groups. Now of those 5 groups, how many are in color? 2, right? So 8/20 is also equal to 2/5. In fact, I can go up to the top again because they're all still the same fraction. So 8/20 is equal to 4/10 and is equal to 2/5. They're all equivalent fractions. Okay, so let's try another example. We're going to illustrate how this time it's like, okay, they're telling you that these two are equivalent fractions, they're equal. Prove it, okay? So I'm going to draw the same model. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the smaller pieces of tenths. So I'm going to show tenths first. In fact, I'm going to show this fraction first. So I'll take my pencil. There's 10 equal parts. I'm going to color, of those 10 equal parts, I'm going to color 8. So all of a sudden we have 8 tenths, right? So to explain why, there's 10 counters, and of those 10 counters, 8 are in color. It's 8 tenths. Now we're going to make 5 groups. Okay, so to make 5 groups, here's 1 group, 2 groups, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so all of a sudden you see 8 tenths, right? But then you see 4/5 as well. I didn't add another group. I didn't color any more counters. So that tells you that the fractions are equal. Now, the last thing to consider is what I said at the start, is that fractions could be renamed in an infinite number of ways. So if I take the fraction 1/6, right, and I want to come up with an equivalent fraction, I say, okay, give me an equivalent fraction of 1/6. All I'm going to do is multiply the top and the bottom by the same number. And you can multiply it by any number. So, 1 times 2, and then, oops, no video's ever perfect. So then, there we go, try that again. So, and then 6 times 2 is 12. Then I could even multiply it by 3, right? I can multiply each bottom and top number by 4, okay? It doesn't matter what I multiply it by, but every time I multiply, I'm creating equivalent fractions. Fractions can be renamed in an infinite number of ways, okay? So you can look at our models, okay? You can look at our big ideas, and we prove that in order to compare fractions, they can be renamed. And you rename them to compare them or to even add and subtract them. And then now we just proved that fractions can be renamed in an infinite number of ways. By the way, at the beginning, I said that you are going to be given a password. What I want you to do with this password, I want you to get an email and send it to me, okay? So open up your Outlook email for the board and write this word into the text. Well, these words. Part and whole. Okay, you don't have to write anything else. You don't have to explain it. Just write the words part and whole and email it to me. And once you do that, then I know that you watched a video. And it's easier to help people who watched a video compared to who didn't. Okay, so thank you for listening and good luck this week.